welcome to a new episode of The Brand Called You. I am Arini and I am with the founder of the Guardian Pharmacy and Equation Coaching, Mr. Ashutosh Garg. Today we will be discussing the work-life balance. Hello, sir.
Hi, Arini.
Hi. So, who are the major players at your work as well as in your life that demand the maximum amount of attention?
So, Arini, most of us are leading very, very busy lives. And who are the people who are stakeholders in our lives? Number one is our family. Family, when we are young, it's our parents. As we get a little older, we decide to get married with our spouse. We have children, our children get included. Parents continue to be there. That's in the workplace, in the home place. Then there's the workplace. So you've got your peers, your subordinates, and your senior superiors. And then there is the entire community that we live in. And each one of these are demanding your time. And therefore, it is very critical that you're able to balance this out well, which is how the whole term work-life balance comes into existence. How do you balance your time between your work and your time between your life, which is your family, yourself, your me time, and everything else. So it is very, very critical for us to be able to make sure that there is a balance. At no stage can we turn around and say that I will ignore my work because I want to spend all my time with the people who I love very much. And at the same time, we cannot also say that I will ignore the people that we love very much and only spend all time at work.
Right.
So therefore, it's a very old three-word phrase, work-life balance, but it is important.
We have often heard that I give quality time to my family, or you must give quality time to your family. So, what is this quality time with family?
I think quality time is a misnomer. Um, I'm reminded of a time when my son's school principal, Mr. Arun Kapoor from Basant Valley, asked me the same question about my son, and I said, "Oh, I like to spend quality time with him." And he said to me, he said, "Oh, so that means now you say that from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. is my time with my son," which is how a lot of people interpret. I go back home, I spend 1 hour with my family, and that's quality time. But I think quality time is a misnomer. You need to be able to give as much time as is needed to your family, because they are those who are most precious to you. And we also have to be reliant on one simple factor, that nobody's family will be unreasonable, where they will keep demanding more and more so-called quality time, which would end up compromising your work situation.
Right.
So quality time is a misnomer. We have to be present for our family, friends, whenever they need us.
Right.
There will be times when you will maybe giving 12 hours in a day to them. There will be times when you will give them only 30-35 minutes in a day because you've got other work going on.
Right.
But the communication to the family has to be that I am available to you.
That makes me think. And one of the things that just came to my mind while we were talking about quality time to family, in case of a startup, in case of an entrepreneur, do you think it is equally important to give quality time to your employees? And what would that quality time for employees would mean?
Oh, absolutely. When you are in a startup phase, there is a certain relationship that you have with the people who are working with you, right? They're almost like a family. And at that particular time, as the founder of the enterprise, you have to take into account their requirements, and you almost become like a person who has to be able to listen to their agony stories. You have to be present to support them when they are looking at work related challenges. You have to support them if they've got issues which are personal, because it's a small group of people. Having said that, over a period of time, as the business starts to grow, this relationship has to evolve, because there are lots of pressures on your time as the founder, and therefore you cannot be expected to give the same amount of time as you used to
Right.
when you were just 6 people. But today, if you're 60 people or 600 people or 6,000 people, the demands on your time become very different from the other people as well.
Taking a cue from your phrase that your time will also become more precious. So, how must one manage time? What do you think?
You know, I've met lots of people who say that I just can't find time. I'm just so busy. And yet, um, I know that I have never in my life ever said to anybody, I don't have time. So I think time is also a state of the mind. You know, it's like someone comes, to a meeting and says, I was 15 minutes late because there was too much traffic. And in today's day and age with Google Maps, you know exactly how much time it will take. And my response always is that then you should have left half an hour early. Or when someone says that I'm so busy and I just don't have time to do anything. I've often told this to colleagues who used to work with me in different parts of my life that if you don't have any time, either you're overworked and therefore you need an assistant, or you're inefficient. It can only be one of these two, because there cannot be any situation where day after day, year after year, you don't have time. While you're working, there are bound to be days when you have to work 18 hours, 19 hours, 20 hours because there's a deadline to be met. But if that becomes a norm, then there's a problem, and then you need a change.
One thing that you have taught me over and over again is the bottom drawer principle. Would you like to elaborate on that?
So this is a very interesting principle, which I have followed all my life. When I started working, there were no computers, but we used to get uh, paper mail, and the assistant would bring huge amounts of mail in a mail folder, as it used to be called. And I used to struggle through 200 letters that would arrive, and I'd spend most of my time. So what I started to do was that anything that I thought was not relevant, I would just pick it up from a mail folder and put it into my bottom drawer of the desk. And at the end of 30 days, if nobody had reached out to me for those letters, I would put it into the shredder. If it was important for someone, they would reach out to me. Now let's fast forward to today's scenario, and I'm sure with emails and so many other forms of digital communication, the pressure on our inbox is huge. And I know when I was actively running Guardian, I used to get some 400 or 500 emails a day, because we love to copy the mail to someone who's senior, you know. And I started following the same bottom door principle there also. So it became easier. So I would say anything that is copied to me on so and so subjects should automatically be sent in my Microsoft Outlook to my junk folder. At the end of 1 month, I would review my junk folder. If there was anything of relevance, I would look at it. Otherwise, I didn't need to shred. I would just right click and say press empty folder, and off it went. So I think it is important for us, and this bottom drawer principle is not just for work, but it's a part of life. We are constantly addressing challenges, issues all the time, and we don't prioritize. So what the bottom drawer principle helps me to do is to start prioritizing and saying whatever is irrelevant in my life should really be thrown out, and I carry on with what is relevant to me and to people who matter to me.
Fantastic. I think I've been following it for a while, and I must assure you guys, it really works. So that brings me to another very, very important question, which is how to say no. Every day we are, at least I am, bombarded with requests. Can you do this? Can you do this? Can you please review this? uh, Initially I found saying no very, very difficult. Over the years I have learned, but then I can't say that I have mastered the art of saying no.
Very good. No, so before I answer the specific question, let me tell you a small story. I used to go to China very often on work. And I've been going there at least 8, 10 times a year since 1989. So I think I know the country quite well. I was talking to a friend from the US, and we just got chatting. And he made a very interesting observation between Chinese businessmen and Indian businessmen. He said that it is very difficult to get a Chinese businessman to say yes. And then he said it is very difficult to get an Indian businessman to say no, because we just figure out, someone asks us to do something, we say, we'll get it done. I know I can figure out something. And this horrible word which is being popularized in our country called jugaad, I think it's a terrible word, which allows us the license to do anything the way we want to. But coming to know, let's look at some interesting examples. You're invited to a party, you accept. You go to the party and you say, first it takes 2 hours to drive, and you say, why the hell did I accept this party? You go there and you're bored, silly, and you keep thinking, why didn't I say no? You have a colleague at work who is frustrated or who's not performing. Um, you know as the boss that this individual is not performing, but you will keep on dragging on with that individual instead of being able to say, no, it's not working. Um, Happens with friends. So many times we get into situations where we think that if I had the ability to say no, I wouldn't have got into an awkward situation. So it's not a difficult thing to do. It's just the hesitation that we have all the time in our mind, that if I say no, what will the other person think? And that's completely irrelevant, because that person has his or her own agenda,
Right.
and you have yours.
Right.
So why do you have to hesitate about saying no? Because you think the other person may not like it.
Right.
Because at the end of it, you are harming yourself by not being able to say no.
Right.
So learn to say no and make yourself much happier.
That's a fantastic advice. And one thing, since 2019, it was my New Year resolution that I'm not going to say yes to anybody this year, because I had made so many commitments in 2018.
Yeah.
I figured that my 2019 is just going to go honoring those commitments. And what has happened in the last 9, 10 months is my value has increased. I feel it, not that I get to know, because people think that, okay, it's so difficult to get him to say yes, he must be somebody important. So
Perfect. Yeah, that's another way to look at it.
Another way to look at it.
I agree.
So another thing, now we talked about work. You answered a few questions on work. I would bring it back to family now. Is it really possible to leave your work at your workplace?
The answer is yes and no. When I say that leave your work at your workplace, what I mean is that it is important in today's very, very highly connected world to be able to switch off at some times. Otherwise, when I look at people, millennials like you, you first thing you wake up and check is your mobile. Are there any mails? Are there any WhatsApps? Look at my Instagram, look at my Facebook, or whatever else you look at. Then you're constantly with your phone right till you go to sleep, and then your phone is lying right next to you on your bed, on your bedside. Now, I often ask people that if you don't look at your phone from 7 p.m. Till the time you wake up, will the world come to a halt? The answer generally is no. I've done this, I think, for at least the last 6, 7 years, where after 7 p.m., and mind you, I get a lot of messages because I sit on committees and boards and all around the world. But people know that 7 p.m. onwards, I will not check my mail. I will not check my messages. And my phone stays on my study table. It does not go into my bedroom. And nobody has lost anything. And I'm certainly a much happier person, because this device is not intruding in my life. So my message is not that the device is bad. My message is that in order to have a better work-life balance, you can certainly leave that work device away.
That sounds doable, but I don't know how many of us are going to follow that. But then it certainly sounds doable. Now, when we started talking, I asked you who are the major players in work-life balance that demand the maximum attention. We spoke about friends and family. We spoke about work.
Yeah.
And the fourth very important aspect that we have not spoken about is me, myself.
Correct.
So, how important is me time?
Critical, very, very critical. Because everything needs time to rejuvenate, to be able to revive oneself, right? Which is why you suddenly find such an amazing amount of yoga being done. People are running, people are going to the gym, people are doing so many things which are on their own. And that is the time when you are, which I call me time, is the time for you to think, to reflect, to plan, right? To be able to internalize what you have done in the previous day, to be able to plan what you want to do the next hour or the next day. And it's a time when you need to be with yourself. So all the scientists, all the people who are specialists in managing human behavior, they're all talking about the fact that we must be able to give some time to ourselves. And I see this more and more in a lot of millennials, where other than, of course, the fact that you are constantly connected with the digital world somewhere or the other, with some device or the other, people are not sleeping well because they've got too many stresses, too many pressures. And I often ask people that with all these stresses, all these pressures, all these connectivities that you have, what time are you giving to yourself? And the answer generally is nothing. So, like, you often tell me that you enjoy cooking, right? Now, your cooking is your me time, right? There are other people who I know who love to go for an hour and a half run. There are some people who write. There are some people who just meditate, right? And there's so many different ways of just being with yourself without any intrusion from digital media, which includes television, without any intrusion from family, friends, employees. Just that 1.5 hours per day, if you are able to spend with yourself, that is good enough. I mean, there are so many people who I know play music, and that music is me time for them. So very critical for everyone to be able to say that this time is mine, and be selfish about it, and have the ability to say no to anybody who wants to intrude in your me time.
Yes, thank you so much. That's really helpful. Hope you are enjoying our episodes. We are slowly approaching our 100th episode. We should be done with our 100th episode sometime next month. And please let us know in the comments below how you are finding the show. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You podcast. Be sure to visit tbcy.in to join the conversation, access show notes, and discover fantastic bonus content. You can follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Simply search for The Brand Called You. Thank you, and see you next week.